ChowDownChou or random gaming, depending on what you're
All
watching.
right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Chow Down Chow. Today we got the pride of Next Gen Consulting, Sudarshan Gopalakrishnan, joining us. The ex-president of Next Gen Consulting, one of the my favorite clubs on campus, and a club that I've been in for what 7 semesters.
Yep, we call you the club elder. There's a reason for it.
Exactly. So before we jump into our main topic of the day, we'll get into that a little bit later. I just wanted to sort of retell the story from both sides of how me and Sudarshan met each other, because I thought it was a pretty interesting story. And was it true that, I was one of the very first people that you met when you got to Berkeley?
Oh yeah, I think I met you like the second day I landed into the US. So yeah,
Really?
yep.
And that's crazy. Yeah, so I just became an RA at that time, and I had a like a 20-inch monitor when I was a freshman, and now I got my own room. I wanted to upgrade to something bigger, so I bought like a huge TV, and I wanted to sell my monitor. So I just posted it on Free and for Sale, and some some kid named Sudarshan wanted to buy it. And I still remember the process, because I remember my initial price was like whatever, like $80, and you were asking me if it's okay to do like 40. I was like,
Mhm.
what is this kid trying to do? And then we finally settled on like something like 55, and that's the first time I met you, was when I
Mhm.
gave you the monitor. And little did I
Yep.
know that we were gonna run into each other at the was it at the Next Gen like info session, or like first club meeting when we ran into each other?
Yeah, I think it was the first club meeting. I think I think I did not go to an info session for next
Mm,
gen,
okay.
ironically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it was the first club meeting, and I was like, "Hey, I know you,"
I
kind
know. I
of
know.
thing. Yeah.
I sold you a monitor. Did we realize that at that point? Like, did we say to each other, "Oh, didn't I sell you a monitor?" Was that? Did we like recognize that?
I, I think that was like one of the first like proper conversations I've had with you.
Gotcha.
And to be honest, I still have that monitor. It's
Oh,
still with me
really?
right now.
You're
Yep.
still using it? How's it holding up? Still working
It's
well?
actually been through a lot. It's moved 4 houses now,
Yeah.
and I've been through a very rough many rough car rides, but
Okay.
it still works and it has survived. So
Yeah, you're
it's
taking care of it.
Derek's monitors are always fantastic monitors.
I know. The only problem that I had with that particular monitor was that it didn't have a like a sound output. It didn't have a speaker, so that's why I wanted to get rid of it, because I wanted to
Oh
like
yeah.
play video games. So I needed like a speaker with the television. So it didn't work out for me. But for you, hey, you're still gonna keep it you're gonna sell it anytime soon and get rid of it.
I don't think I'm ever gonna sell this. This has worked just fine. We've
Mhm.
been through a lot with this monitor. So what I did was, instead of getting a super wide, I wanted to get a wide monitor. So instead of
Mhm.
getting one of those 34 inches, I just got a 24-inch wide monitor and made a U shape with my
Oh,
laptop,
like you
a mini wide monitor, and the monitor that I bought from you.
gotcha.
So this setup's gonna be with me for a while, at least a year, and I hope more. So
Nice.
Derek's monitor is gonna live with me until I actually start work, I guess.
I know you're always gonna have a piece of me to remember me by, So it's gonna be in the
Definitely.
room in front of you. Yeah. So I did that whole monitor business. That was one of the first purchases I ever did when I first got to the U.S. When I was setting up my own dorm room. That's one of the
Mhm.
first things that I bought. As at Best Buy, I went in. I asked them for the cheapest one. They had like a student bag special. It's like $100 or something like that. So, you know, now it's now a next gen, club tradition. Whoever
Yep.
whoever joins the club gets a monitor. All right.
Guess so.
So, what did you have any like first impressions of me, like when you first met me, because or about the dorms, about Berkeley in general?
I think the first impression I had was this guy knows how to haggle.
Really?
So
Wow.
yeah, so
Okay.
I guess the negotiation from a $80 monitor to 55 was pretty
Yeah.
fun.
Yeah.
But yeah, so I guess that was my first impression.
Yeah, for
But I
sure.
guess like as I got to get to know you more through
Yeah.
next gen, I think I had a lot of fun understanding how like cool you are and how much
Wow.
fun you are to
Oh,
have around, and like it's I guess it was I think a very beautiful journey, and I guess a
wow.
monitor started this journey.
It did. It did. And when I first met you, I remember you had like a polo shirt on and you had that look, right? Because I was an international student myself. So you had that look like you just got here and it's all kind of very unfamiliar. You're still trying to figure things out. So I distinctly remember that. And that was when I first became an RA. So I was thinking to myself, oh, so this is what I'm going to have. Like, this is the people that I'm going to have to like help out during the first year. So that was what I was thinking of. And I didn't know I would run into you later on in next gen. When I first ran into you, they introduced you as a PM. At that point,
Mhm.
I've been in the club for 2 semesters, and I've only been an analyst. So the first impression I got was like, wow, this kid is like really going for it. Like he's aggressive and he wants to like start learning stuff immediately. So that was what I was thinking of. And then yeah, as I gotten to know you throughout this whole journey in next gen together, and you being the president, yeah, like I'm really impressed by how like driven you are and all this success. Like for me, as someone who's like, I guess older. No, I'm not that old. I'm like 1 year older than you, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, but someone who's been like an RA and like someone who's always been sort of the senior in the club, it's just nice to see you have everything you have and accomplish everything you've accomplished. So
Oh yeah,
it's been really fun.
like I said, this means a lot. Like coming from you actually means a lot to me.
All right, nice, nice. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into our main topic of the day because for
Mhm.
me, we were talking about doing a podcast on another next gen call, and you told me about how your internship went and how you're gonna return to the company full time. So for me, I've always been very interested in what the recruiting process for like CS majors look, because I know the recruiting process for a business major, but I've just never heard it from the other side, and I want to get to know like any similarities and any differences, you know. So I guess the first
Mhm.
question I would have is, I know when you're applying to be a software engineer or any kind of software job, it's very important to nail like the technical part of it. How technical are interviews? Like how much time do you have to spend? Is the stuff taught in classes enough? How much time do you have to spend self-studying, and how big of a portion is it compared to like the personality part?
Sure thing. So I think the 61B and 170 courses and CS 161B and CS 170 courses in Berkeley, I think do a very good job in uh, training you to get into that algorithmic thinking that is kind of required for these software engineering interviews. So what this interview consists of is some companies start off with certain behavioral questions just to see if you are a good like cultural fit to the company.
Sure.
And then the bulk of the interview ends up being the so-called technical portion. What that is they ask you questions such as like build a particular data structure.
Mm,
Here is a small problem statement. How would you write an algorithm to solve it? And so on and so forth. So these are like colloquially called lead code questions. So there's a website called leadcode.com that most software engineers use to like prep for these interviews.
mm,
So again, so that's kind of the primary tool that you would be using outside of your education
mm.
to acquaint yourself with all the various different possibilities of interview questions you can get for a particular company, so on
Interesting.
and so forth.
Okay.
And this website's also like tailored to certain larger companies. So like if you want to recruit for Google,
Yeah.
that website has questions that Google has asked in the past.
Mm,
So you can like just train in that direction and then jump into a Google interview and hopefully crush it. So that kind of so this is the kind of overall gist of what a technical interview is, and or what a software engineering interview is, and like what's kind of required as a prerequisite.
gotcha. And in terms of how they conduct the interview? Is it sort of like off the cuff? They just give you a piece of paper and you sort of have to write down code like how you do in class, or is it they send you a file and you have like 2 weeks to like figure it out like a project? Like, is it basically like a CS project?
So I've actually seen both of those things happen.
Mm.
So usually what companies do is before they do a in-person interview, they send you something called a coding challenge, which is like
Yeah.
a take-home assignment that's like 1.5 hours long. It's usually one to three so-called lead code questions that you just have to answer.
Mm.
And if your results are satisfactory, they invite you to an in-person interview or a phone interview. And during this, we do something called a whiteboard session. So it's more generalized. It's more focused on depict your thought process first on how you're going to solve this problem,
Mm.
and then like write some pseudocode, which is basically ignoring the nuances of syntax and just writing
Yeah.
some generalized code onto a whiteboard or a piece of
Okay.
paper and then demonstrating that.
Gotcha. Okay. And so basically you're writing pseudocode, so you don't really like, you don't have to be like, oh, Google might ask this question in Python, whereas Amazon might ask this question in like R or whatever, like different languages, or not really.
So actually, most companies are language agnostic. So
Okay.
they give you the choice of which language you want to code in,
Uh,
unless it's like a data science role, which kind of requires you to like uh, solve something, like do like execute some SQL queries or something like
mm,
that.
mm,
But if that's not the case, like people usually tend to pick either Java, Python, or C++ to like solve these coding questions. And from what I've noticed, Python is gaining a lot of popularity, just I
definitely.
guess given its simplicity to use and stuff like that.
Yeah. Okay. So they're basically all agnostic. That's fun. Yeah, I guess that's a good way to go about it. Well, just because I don't really understand what lead code is that just like a website, or is it like a special kind of type of question? What is that exactly?
LeetCode's just a website. So the
Okay,
website's just leetcode.com. And
gotcha.
I don't know where the idea of lead coding came from, but I guess they might have been the forerunners in building websites where you can train for technical interviews.
Gotcha.
So I guess that kind of just colloquially became the name in the software engineering
Like
circles.
lead code questions. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah.
So so humor me just a little bit. I feel like I kind of know that there's going to be a coding question like in interviews and with challenges. But just how do they structure the questions? Like maybe put me in your shoes. Like what questions have you encountered? Like typically, what are the questions they ask you? Like what are the problems they ask you to solve? Is it like they ask you to build like a video game, or is it just something simpler like I have this and this is not running well. How do I debug it? Like what are the questions like? Is it open ended? Is it very very well written? What do they look like?
So most interview questions that I've seen are pretty narrow-ended, in the
Yeah.
sense that a classic question people ask is reverse a linked list. So linked list is basically a data structure where items go sequentially. They're
Yeah.
like, yeah, just reverse that list with certain constraints put together.
Hmm.
And yeah, so most questions like follow very similar semantics in the
Gotcha.
sense that they're very focused in terms of what kind of input they'll be providing and what kind of output needs to be expected off
Okay.
of it.
Okay.
And there are like a very limited number of goals that we need to accomplish from that particular task as well.
Okay.
But that being said, there are some companies that focus on more open-ended design questions. So they're like, hey, company X is facing problem Y. How would you build a system that solves this problem Y?
Okay. Sort of like a consulting problem then. It's more about your thought process, not necessarily the ability to write code, I guess, in those questions.
I think it's a combination of both. So you
Okay.
get the consulting aspect of problem solving, breaking down a complex problem into simpler modular parts, and then applying some form of CS concept or technology, a knowledge of technology to solve those modular parts.
Gotcha.
So I think a lot of companies are trying to like potentially move into a system like that,
Mm,
all right, interview format like that. So like compared to last year, or compared to 2 years ago, last year I saw more companies
mm.
doing these open-ended design question formats.
Gotcha. So in terms of the narrow-ended question, this is this sort of like banking where you see the same question like every company asks, like basically from the same list, or not really? Like, is it how do you prepare? Is there like a like you can just look up what are the common questions and that would be enough, or do you have to just like will it ever be a day where you've practiced all of the questions, or will you always encounter new ones?
Okay, so I guess going back to Lead Code, their
Yeah.
website has about like 1,300 questions, if I recall correctly.
Okay.
And they also have a list called 100 top interview questions.
Hmm.
So these Lead Code questions fall into a small number of categories. So there'll be questions on data manipulation or array manipulation. There'll be questions from a topic called dynamic programming. There'll be a question for string formatting, questions in the category of string formatting or regex or things like that. So there are only like a limited number of questions you can ask within those different categories, and there are
Yeah.
only like a finite number of ways you can like solve those problems as well. So
Okay.
if you like lead code enough in many all of these categories,
Yeah.
aka like if you solve like let's say a threshold of 100 or 200 problems, I feel like you get a decent gist of how to approach a new problem if someone were to throw a curveball question at you.
Okay. So it's sort of the
So
same structure and the same way to approach it.
essentially, yeah.
Okay.
Or like a good analogy is actually SATs, right? So SATs are at least when I took it were rather like there was a structure to it. So
Hmm.
if I took enough practice tests, enough practice SAT tests,
Hmm.
I could potentially subconsciously know the rough format of how the questions are going to be framed and so on
Yeah.
and so forth. So
Yeah.
if someone were to like introduce a new SAT test with me to me, and even though I have not seen any of those questions before, I'll have a intuitive understanding or an idea of how to solve that particular problem and do it quickly.
Got.
So if you lead code enough or practice on lead code enough, you get that intuitive understanding of how to solve these interview problems.
Gotcha. Okay. By the way, I just noticed your background. Is that from The Office?
Yep,
Okay.
that's Stanley in the background.
Yeah, I thought that I was just, yeah, I didn't want to say it because it makes me seem like I'm stereotyping, but I'm pretty sure that was Stanley. Anyways, nice. I like it. Okay, so all right, back to what we're talking about. Technical interviews. How important it is compared to the personality part. What do you think is the more important part? If you complete like let's not say completely fail technicals, like maybe you botch a question or two, but you had a great like personality interview. Like what do you think they're really looking for? Is it more fit or is it more technicals?
I think that depends from company to company. I think I've seen companies fall within the spectrum of like within the entire spectrum of like proportioning between a person between behavioral interview results and technical interview results. But I think from at least my experience, I think uh, most companies that I interviewed with looked for a combination of both technical skills and ability to communicate and
Yeah,
ability to fit in within a organization. Um, so I guess the primary reason for that is because regardless of what your technical ability is, you still need to work with other engineers
yeah,
and product designers and product managers and so on and so forth. And it is, I think, very important for you to like be a good social fit for a company, fall within their culture, and have the ability to communicate effectively
hmm,
so that you can succeed as an engineer. So
got,
I think most companies look for a good balance of both, but the proportionality of that balance depends from company to company.
gotcha. Okay, and just out of curiosity, what like how do let's just take Berkeley CS students for example. Like, how do they think about technicals? Is this something that everyone typically aces? Like, you're not allowed to get it wrong, or is it something like you're gonna get a couple technicals wrong? Like, how sure are students on technicals? Do you have to be like almost 100% correct, or in your opinion, are you allowed to like botch a couple and it's still gonna be fine?
So I think the at least from my understanding, when you get the coding challenges or the initial like coding screens, what I've noticed is that most companies would like for you to get them right, like
Yeah,
produce good solutions.
yeah,
And I think Berkeley students are good at practicing and getting practicing uh, uh, the intermediary steps that they need to take in order to accomplish a particular goal. Like
yeah,
SATs, like that's just an intermediary step that they need to take to get into Berkeley. So like they do really well in them and score really high.
yeah.
So I feel like Berkeley CS and EEC students treat lead code as the SATs of getting into their dream internship or dream job,
Hmm.
and do well in like practice well, practice enough and do well in them.
Okay.
But yeah, so that hence translates to many students like passing through these initial like uh, coding challenges and like getting those in-person interviews.
Yeah,
Once you jump into the in-person interviews, I think that it's not just correctness, but it is also your thought process and how you get to that solution. So even if let's say your solution is not the most perfect or does not like meet all the edge cases, I think, at least from my experience, I think companies were looking for how I reached to a particular solution and
yeah.
how receptive I was for like with the feedback that the engineer who was interviewing me provided me with, and how was I able to like communicate my thought process and rectify myself if I heard like a superior solution from someone else.
Gotcha. Okay. Now, another thing I was curious about, and I listed it down on our agenda, is sort of the hierarchy of CS major jobs. And you told me that you don't really understand what that means. That's fine. Let me
Mhm.
explain. So, um, by hierarchy, I mean, is there some sort of an order of jobs you would prefer as CS majors? Or like in terms of the of course not like in an individual case because everyone wants to do different things, but just in a general sense, like are people more inclined to work at like big tech companies or startups? Like what's like the tier list? Like if you ask me the same question for business students, I'd say, oh, if you want to do consulting, you'd want to start with McKinsey, Bain, BCG, and then you probably want to work with Big Four or Parthenon. Like there's some sort of a little like a hierarchy list going on, or like if you want to do banking, you'd want to do bulge bracket before you want to do uh like middle market, right? So in terms of just what you observe in the whole like Berkeley CS vibe, what is sort of the hierarchy of jobs and titles that they would prefer?
Okay, so I think that question is a bit uh, or the question has a bit of a weird response, I think, in the
Yeah.
tech field.
Okay.
So I guess Berkeley as a institution, or Berkeley CS or Berkeley EECS as an institution has a bit of a hype for working for startups
Uh-huh.
and like these hot tech companies like let's say Uber, Airbnb, Lyft, so on and so forth.
Hmm.
So that plus your big FANG companies, Facebook, Apple,
Yeah.
Google, Amazon, Microsoft, so on and so forth. Like I feel like that's the traditional like I made it
Gotcha.
kind of a company list
Okay.
for most CS and EEC students from my understanding.
Okay.
But I think how people generally look at this is depending on what industry that they want to work in.
Yeah.
I feel like tech is so pervasive that it like what you do like tech like I personally think there's like nothing necessarily called the tech industry or something like that, right?
Gotcha. Yeah.
So, for example, Google and Facebook are in the advertisement business.
Yeah.
Amazon is in the e-commerce business.
Hmm.
If you want to like do tech, if you want to like be a software engineer in the financial services space, we have like Goldman Sachs,
Banks. Yeah.
JP Morgan, Bank
Yeah.
of America, etc., etc. And if you want to do something more quantitative or researchy, you have a lot of R&D divisions in many tech companies,
Hmm.
or R&D divisions in investment banks, or people also go to national research labs and so on and so forth. So I
Gotcha.
feel like I guess this is just a roundabout way of me saying that uh, the prestige of a company kind of depends on which sector someone wants to work in.
Yeah.
And apart from those generalized list of companies that I mentioned earlier, the big names that usually pop up,
Yeah.
and some of those like pre-IPO startups are like really hot tech startups that are working on something
Yeah.
super disruptive or super innovative. I feel like the prestige is like in the eyes of who's
Yeah. Yeah. For
trying to
sure.
evaluate this.
Yeah, that makes sense. It all depends on what sort of industry and what job, honestly, like what job role do you want? I'm sure like a bunch of CS majors like don't necessarily want to be software engineers. And that sort of leads me into another question that I have is in terms of CS majors, like how many of them like do other things that are not software related? Like, is it something that you see very commonly? Do they jump into like I've heard people jump into like consulting or banking, which doesn't require a
Mhm,
lot of expertise, knowledge, from what I understand. So
mhm.
I've heard some of those cases, but from your view, which you're an EECS major, so you probably know more about it than I do. Like, what are the probability? How common is it for CS majors to jump out of the mold and do stuff that's not really in their realm?
I think I've met like a very few number of people who have considered investment banking or consulting.
Gotcha.
So investment bankers usually, from what I've noticed, jump into TMT
Yeah.
specifically, or if they're doing consulting, they jump into either something as generalized or like as Accenture,
Yeah.
or something as niched as, let's say, BCG Gamma, or
Yeah.
where they are providing very specialized technical consulting services for clients.
Yeah.
So I see a subset of people jumping into that. Apart from, I guess outside of CSI, there are a lot of people interested in product management,
Yeah.
and that's like a very hot up and coming
For sure.
trend that I've been noticing over the past 4 years in Berkeley
Yeah.
CS and communities as well.
Yep.
And we also see a subset of people who move to finance.
Hmm.
So these usually involve the more quantitatively
On.
inclined,
Yeah.
either researchers or like quantitatively inclined, like software engineers
Yeah.
who want to like like pursue the space of optimization, or like basically solve like research problems or very difficult math problems
Yeah.
in the optimization and probability spaces. So
Gotcha.
I see a lot of these guys becoming quantitative traders or quantitative researchers in big banks or hedge funds.
Yeah.
And you also see a bunch of software developers joining these places as well. They're usually called quantitative developers, and
Yeah.
their role is usually either building infrastructure or building programs or tools that the traders and researchers can use to execute trades faster and like hopefully make more money out of it.
Gotcha. Yeah, like you said, I think one big thing I've also noticed is product management. A lot of business kids now want to get into
Mhm.
product management. I see a bunch of engineering kids want to get into product management. Me personally, I feel like it's product management to me sounds like a job that's very required to sort of interact with people. It's a lot of going
Mhm.
back and forth and interact with different departments. So like I don't really see it requiring like advanced technical skills, at least in this age. So it's sort of a thing where it's suitable for anyone with that sort of a passion and that ability, that soft skill to step into that role. But I'm sure you've noticed that a lot, right? Do a lot of like CS kids now want to get into product management?
So I guess just to clarify a bit,
Yeah,
there are like two forms of product management programs that companies offer.
yeah,
So one is a something called a technical product manager or technical program manager, which is more inclined towards applying let's say machine learning, for example, in order to optimize development processes for
okay,
companies.
yeah,
So that's one space people get into. The
mm,
other part is called associate product manager. So that's kind of a pipeline into becoming a product manager of, let's say, let's take an example, right? Google Chrome as a product, they might have like a couple of product managers, I'm assuming. And then they might have a couple of associate product managers underneath them who will like be part of that growth pipeline.
gotcha.
So from my understanding, once you hit a level of growth in tech companies, upward mobility is gets really hard for software engineers. So
Yeah,
many people jump ship into product management and take ownership of product and grow from there
gotcha.
into the more administrative or executive side of a company.
Yeah,
And I think that I think many companies are realizing that like that talent pipeline, I guess, needs to be built from the entry level jobs. So that's where the birth of, I think, associate product management programs came in.
yeah,
And I think even though a lot of business students with CS minors or backgrounds in CS are jumping into that role,
yeah,
I think having a CS education is really helpful
mm,
for being a product manager. So if you're like a double major in CS and econ, I think being a product manager is a associate product manager is a very good place to be in.
gotcha.
So the reason why I say that is primarily because you need to have a very good understanding of what's technically feasible in
Mm.
order to be a better orchestrator for communicating between designers, management, and engineers likewise.
Makes sense. Yeah, I just exposed myself for my juvenile understanding of product managers. I took one decal. Okay, I just took a product intro to product management decal, and we had a bunch of guest speakers who complained about that their jobs are basically just meetings after meetings. So that was my understanding. But thank you for clearing that up for me. I know there's a lot more nuance to it. So obviously, I'm not getting the job anytime soon.
But I do have heard that it's a lot of meetings. Those
Yes,
guys just keep rotating from one business meeting to another every day. So,
exactly.
I mean, that's pretty accurate from what
Yeah,
I've heard too.
yeah, but like you said, I think some sort of a knowledge in CS would definitely help out just in terms of communicating to the actual engineers about what's capable, what's not, the timeline, all that. That's very important. So I definitely recognize that. But in terms of so when you were recruiting, did you ever think about crossing into the world of business in general, like whatever the role may be,
Uh, so
or not really?
I
Just
guess
finding
I
historically.
considered consulting as a career
Okay.
path initially.
Okay.
I think this was my freshman year when I like started like doing NGC stuff.
Gotcha.
I thought maybe consulting might be a good fit for me,
Mm,
but I guess as I was like diving deeper into the recruitment process, I realized that I enjoy like like staying in one place longer and
mm,
building out my solutions till from start to end.
yeah.
So I felt that that might be something that is a more like I guess I would be better fit as a software engineer to see like in a company where in one specific company where I see a solution happening from
Gotcha.
the start to the end.
Gotcha.
And I've
Yeah.
also considered product management. The reason why I shied away from it is because I felt that having industry exposure in actually coding and engineering products would be very valuable to me as a product manager. So
Mm,
I just felt that if like today might not be the best time for me to consider product management full time, but rather after I spend, let's say, like 5+ years in a software company, having a good understanding of how different products are built and how different stakeholder needs are met, I think I would be a much more knowledgeable and better suited for actually spearheading the development and the growth of the product.
Gotcha. Yeah, the reason I wanted to ask you about that is I don't know if you recruited for any like companies in the business side of things, but have you noticed any difference between the recruiting process for tech companies and like consulting companies, or what's the big difference? Because I don't know if there is any, but I just wonder from your perspective.
I think I think there's not a lot of like differences in the process.
Okay.
So I guess from my end, I guess like being part of a consulting club and helping students recruit throughout these past few years.
Yeah.
What I've noticed is that consulting and let's say banking as well requires you to do a lot of networking and making yourself more visible.
Yeah.
And going through tech recruitment cycles, I felt that is obviously very well appreciated and very well noticed as well. But I feel like the idea of networking is not as like prominent in the
Yeah.
tech space.
Gotcha.
So that's the biggest difference that I see. But
Okay.
I guess that goes back to what each of those companies are looking for,
Yeah.
or each of those roles are looking for. So I mean, I from my understanding, consulting like requires you to be the go-getter, uh, like try to like fight for what you want, like reach out to people, so on and so forth. And I think like the software engineering space does not really require you to necessarily exercise that skill
Gotcha.
at necessarily the entry level.
Yeah.
In the entry level, I kind of strongly feel that there's a very clear structure on what needs to be done in terms of the development, and the conversations mostly internally.
Gotcha.
And like someone assigns you tickets, you build out those features, and that's like integrated into production. And the idea of, let's say in consulting, let's say you're like like conducting surveys, for example, you need to be that go-getter who needs to like know how to network with people, reach out to people, and like establish those connections and relationships such that you can like get the best data possible for your client services. And I feel like that's not something that is really required or part of the software development culture, at least in the initial stages of your career. So I guess that goes back to the now going back to the recruitment cycle. I think the expectations of a entry level software engineer versus consultants are kind of reflected within the interview process, and I guess that's the only reason why I would be able to like notice or point out any differences.
Gotcha. Yeah, I just wanted to hear from someone with a little more perspective on both sides. Because obviously, I never recruited for any tech job, so I wouldn't understand. I wouldn't get if there's any difference. But okay, enough about recruiting. It's a it's a grim subject. Every time I think of recruiting, I start flashing back to like first semester junior year when it's so stressed and my hair's falling out.
I completely remember that time.
Yeah, I'm literally just like stressing out all day. You would go to class and every kid's talking about is how they got an interview to this place, they got an offer from this place. It was so stressful. So just be ready for that. Any prospective, college students out there ready for recruiting. But I wanted to talk a little bit about your internship experience. So why don't you like tell us like what was your internship? What did you do? And more specifically, I want to get to know what did you do on a daily basis, like on a day-to-day level. What was your job looking like, and how was that impacted by a work from home? So it's a lot of questions in that. So take your time going through all of it.
Sure thing. So this past summer, I interned at Goldman Sachs, New York office, or sorry, in the New York, New Jersey office. The engineering team sits in New Jersey, so I guess if I was in person, I would have been in the New Jersey
New
office.
Jersey.
But just to reiterate myself, I interned at Goldman Sachs in the New Jersey office, where I worked as a engineering summer analyst, and my focus area was in software engineering. So what I did was I was part of the foundational infrastructure business unit, where we build software tools and pipelines that supports all the compute systems in the firm.
Okay.
So
Gotcha.
I guess as far as like my like day-to-day work in Goldman Sachs is concerned,
Yeah.
I was kind of like assigned a project where like project with a certain number of like milestones that I had to hit. So each morning I just had to like so each day I had a rough idea on what are the different tasks I wanted to work on.
Yeah.
I contacted like people in the people in my team and people in other affiliated teams with any required resources and associated stuff. After that was done, I just spent a decent amount of time coding and implementing the solution that I was thinking of.
Gotcha.
And in the end, I usually had a check-in with my manager saying that I accomplished all these things and this is what I plan to do tomorrow.
Yeah.
And we had a small discussion on do I need to correct course? Do I need to add more tasks? So on and so forth.
Okay.
And apart from all this work-related stuff, I had a lot of fun networking with a lot of people in the company. I was able to meet like some of the like brightest people that I've met in the infrastructure engineering space, which is a specialty that I'm really interested in getting into.
Okay.
And I was able to get a lot of exposure on how technology is used or built in a financial services institution. And given that given unlike Google, where tech is the product, Goldman Sachs like investment banking and investment management are the prime like client services that they offer. And technology is used as a driver in order to make all of these client interactions happen. So a lot of people in the company who I spoke to were able to help me understand the prominence or the rapid growth of technology within these client services spaces, and how technology is actually revolutionizing how Goldman Sachs works with its clients and like makes their clients' lives easier. So it was really fascinating stuff that I got to learn. Unfortunately, my internship was cut down to 5 weeks instead of 10 due to the ongoing like public health
COVID
situation.
thing. Yeah, definitely.
So but however, I think those 5 weeks were like super fun packed, and I really like learned a lot, not just as an engineer, but I think I also grew as a person. I was able to like learn how to like over communicate given this work from home situation. And I was able to like stay on top of the tasks that I wanted to, and like ensure that if I was like lagging behind, I knew the right people to contact, and to like ensure that other parts of the project or others deliverables are not getting bogged down because of me. So like given all of this put together, I think I was able to like really understand how like I should be growing as a person, and I think I was able to like implement those changes within the 5 weeks that I interned at Goldman. So overall, a very like fun packed, knowledgeable, and like or fun packed and a inquisitive experience, I would say.
I can tell, man. It's grown on you. Like last time I saw you, you wouldn't have put on the Patagonia. Now you got the whole finance bro thing going on. You know, you're slowly morphing into a finance bro. I can see it. So yeah, that's what Goldman Sachs do to you. All right. Anyways, so glad to see you had a nice experience. So I would love to hear a little bit more about like what maybe you're not allowed to like share what the exact project is, but maybe just a brief idea on what was it about. Was it was it a specific thing that you had to fix in the infrastructure, or was it something like a new functionality you had to add? or was it like a new thing that some of the client facing people wanted to add to the infrastructure? Like, what was the project like?
Oh yeah, okay. So I actually worked on.
Gotcha, gotcha. And I understand you must have done a fantastic job, because I know you're going back as a full-time
Mhm.
employee after you finish your last year in school. Um, I'm sure you're excited about the opportunity. What do you think is like um, interesting about working at a financial institution like that versus maybe some of your classmates or whatever you see going to work at a tech company? Besides from the software part of it, like the technical part of it, what's the biggest difference? What do you think you can gain from working at a financial institute? What are the benefits of it?
I think it's primarily the idea of having like really bright yet diverse minds with very different perspectives.
Yeah.
So this actually goes back to the NGC experience, right? Like not everyone there is a software engineer. We have a good collection of bio majors, bio business majors. We have our traditional econ and Haas.
Yep.
Then we have and we have people from our like pure natural sciences,
Yep.
humanities, and then people like me who are CS and EECs. So like putting all these minds together and working on like very interesting solutions that ensures that we use each other's skill sets
Yeah.
is something that's like really fascinating, and I think working in the financial services industry offers the same.
Gotcha.
uh, Depending on what product or what part you're working what part of the firm you're working on, you'll have the opportunity to, I think, work with investment bankers, maybe people from the legal team, accounting team, traders, so on and so forth, and come together and like put a solution that kind of puts everyone's core skill sets together, and really build a product or a piece of tech that can really optimize things and make things like make things faster, better, and
Yeah.
cheaper for the firm.
Yeah.
So I kind of think that that's an interesting experience that I really enjoyed being in a GC,
Yeah.
and I feel like that's like the environment I kind of want to be in when I go full
Gotcha.
time. And
Gotcha.
I think like this internship kind of really helped me understand that as well,
Hmm.
and that's kind of like the primary reason why I really love like working in this sector and would love to go back.
Yeah. It makes sense that working at a big institution like that, you get to interact, especially since you're doing like infrastructure stuff. I imagine you would have to interact with a lot of different teams and have sort of,
Mhm.
to get their feedback and improve upon the system and all that. So that sounds very interesting. And plus, you would get to know like a lot of like the finance side of things. It's just a lot of a whole different like knowledge field for, who knows what the future might hold for you. Maybe one day you want to go into finance. You want to wear that Patagonia permanently, you know? Never
uh,
know.
I mean, yeah, like that's always been a space that I've been very fascinated with, and like I guess given the right time and opportunity, I would love to uh like like test that water and see if that's a good fit for me.
Yeah,
And I think like being at Goldman, I think I was able to get a good perspective on the various different spaces that I was like super interested in getting into.
yeah,
So I think like I hope I like really look forward to like having a very similar experience going in full time, and I guess grow my knowledge base even larger in terms of all the different things that happens around tech.
yeah. Makes sense. Well, best of luck to you. That sounds really exciting. So excited for you. I could never get into Goldman Sachs, so at least one of us did. All right. So enough about jobs and all that. I'm sure it's getting boring. I I feel like since we're both international students, this is something that I would like. I like to discuss with other international students. It's sort of the story of why they came to Berkeley, why they did what they did, and like what were their biggest shocks. So I guess the first question to you was like, why did you make the decision to come to study in the U.S. and why exactly Berkeley?
Okay. So actually, I'm a bit unconventional as an international student.
Gotcha.
So I actually did my high school in Houston,
Yeah.
and my family we used to live in Houston since from my eighth grade till my 12th grade. And since I did my high school there, was kind of the natural
Ah,
progression was actually
makes
attending
sense.
university in the US.
Okay.
So I was actually debating between UT Austin and UC Berkeley.
Okay.
And I just felt that UC Berkeley would give me a different exposure from what UT Austin would. I would not be close to my high school friends. I would like have to like meet a lot of new people and like rebuild my network. I think that was a challenge I was like really up to
Yeah.
as I like wrapped up high school, and I just felt
Gotcha.
that that would be a great way of expanding my network and really exploring different cultures and
Gotcha.
people coming from different places. And like Berkeley CS program as well, I feel like what Berkeley did as an institution really fascinated me. So that's kind of the other reason why I inclined towards UC Berkeley over UT
Gotcha.
Austin.
Gotcha.
And I think the I think the choice was pretty fun. Like I think it worked out pretty well for me. I was
Yeah.
able to meet great people like you, Derek, and I guess Berkeley also has a lot of international students coming in and a lot of out of state students coming in,
Yeah.
and that's not necessarily the demographic that UT Austin offers.
Hmm.
So that being said, I was able to like meet a lot of interesting people throughout my, I guess, 3-ish years in Berkeley
Yeah.
now,
Yeah.
and that's kind of like I guess all this put together is primarily the reason why I chose Berkeley.
Gotcha.
And I guess I missed your next question that you had on this.
Yeah, that was my question.
Oh, okay.
I do have another question though. How do you feel about the Houston Rockets getting bounced by my Lakers?
I am
Five
actually
games.
not a huge basketball
Okay. Yeah, basketball.
fan.
It's all good.
So
It's
I
all
actually that's one thing I kind of regret not picking
yeah.
up in high school. I wish I like picked up basketball in high school and
That's true.
uh uh like understood the game and like
Well,
had a team to cheer for.
is there any like Houston related team that you cheer for? Or not really?
Unfortunately, I'm not a huge sports guy.
Gotcha.
If there is a game going on with a let's say Houston Rockets or Houston Texans and or Houston Texans in football, I guess,
Yeah.
with some other team, I naturally support Houston Texans
Gotcha.
like for the culture.
Gotcha.
But I guess at that point I'm just pretending to know what's happening and
Yeah.
pseudo cheering
Yeah.
for
It's all
Houston
good.
teams.
Yeah.
But I guess that's like one of my biggest regrets from high school, not picking like even though I was living in America and
Mm.
like fairly ingrained within the culture,
Yeah.
I just like never like got into
Never got
sports
into
and
it.
like
Yeah.
enjoyed it
Yeah.
as much as my peers did.
Gotcha. That's fine. So is like Houston, Texas something somewhere that you want to go back to? Like, do you see like your future there, or do you? I know your job's out there in New Jersey, or for the time being, you want to try out the East Coast. Like, where do you see your future being, like location wise? I guess.
Uh, I think Houston or Texas in general is a great place to settle in,
Hmm.
especially with family.
Yeah.
I think I had a lot. I guess to give more context, I grew up. I guess my like since I was like 3 months old to my eighth grade, I lived in Mumbai, which is like one of the most densely populated cities in the world
Yeah.
and super busy, very
Yeah.
mechanical lifestyle. And I guess living in I guess it's like the Manhattan of India.
Yeah.
Just to like give a more understandable comparison.
Yep.
But I guess growing up in a city like that and then moving to a place like Houston, initially Houston felt like a village to me. Like I was like, yo, there's like no public transportation. The
There's
tallest building is 2 stories tall. Where am I right now? That was like my initial reaction to Houston. But I think I grew to understand that that's the lifestyle I actually enjoy.
Hmm.
I mean, like being like single and like enjoying the cities, I think what I see myself in the short term. But
Gotcha.
in the long term, I actually do see myself moving back to a place like Houston,
Hmm.
like
just settle
maybe
down.
moving back to the same neighborhood that I grew up in,
Gotcha.
and like setting up a family there and growing thereafter.
Everything a lot cheaper. Everything's
Oh,
a
that is
whole
true.
lot
And no
cheaper.
state taxes. No
Yeah,
state
no
taxes
state
as well.
taxes. I've been to Houston once. It's a pretty good city. I like it. Some good barbecue.
Yeah.
Some it's
And
nice.
actually, Houston has a good mixture of urban and rural.
It
So
is.
like,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
or rural is the wrong term. Sorry, suburban is the right term.
Exactly.
It has a good mixture of urban and suburban.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, I think, a very great place to be in.
Yeah.
Just even like regardless of you being a someone in the 20s versus someone in the 40s.
Yep.
But yeah, so I think I guess the reason why I love Houston so much is just because I grew up there and I just have sentimental value attached to the place
Gotcha.
where I grew up in.
Gotcha.
But yeah, so I guess cities like that, I guess, which is most of suburban America, I assume, would be
Yeah.
a type of place that I would like love to settle in one day.
Gotcha. Yeah, and I've heard that a lot of people out in California, because of this whole COVID work from home situation, they're starting to move out, and a lot of people are choosing Texas as like the location, just because, like you said, I think like I've been there before, and I feel like it has a good mix of like, if you want to be in like a big city, like Houston still has some parts where it's an urban area, but then you drive out 20 minutes and then you can have a nice suburban neighborhood with suburban home with a
Yeah.
white picket fence, all that. So it's a good mixture. Plus, no state income tax, which is a lot for people out in California or New York. It's like what, like,
That is really true.
yeah, like for engineer like you'd probably get up to like 10% taken by the state, which is pretty
That's
crazy.
actually kind of true. Like
Yeah,
I was just like running like as I was like just like out of curiosity on what's
yeah,
gonna happen when I graduate. I saw these taxes numbers and
it's
they're
insane.
really high in
I
California.
know, I know. They're really, really high in California, and I'm sure they're pretty high in New York as well. California might be
Yeah.
just slightly above, but yeah, it's just it feels bad when like I would be. I remember in my internship, I would get my paycheck every like 2 weeks, right? And let's say I would expect it to start with a number, like the first digit, and then all of a
Hmm.
sudden it's like lower than that. And I'll be like, what? Hang on, what's happening here? But
Who is this FICA taking all my money?
yeah, exactly. What?
Who is this California state taking all? Yeah.
Exactly. I'm like, what? Taxation is
I had a very similar reaction when I got my first internship paycheck.
I know.
And I was
It's
really
shocking.
happy with I was really happy and grateful that I had a job and
Yeah.
got money to
Yeah,
do
yeah,
the
yeah.
job. But
It's
like
shocking.
I said, that's probably the first shocker that everyone
Exactly.
has when they get their first paycheck.
Exactly. It's shocking. You never realize like how much it is. Because like growing up, you never had to pay taxes, right? It's never like
Right.
a responsibility. So it's just kind of weird. But yeah, so going back to I guess you moved to Houston when you were in your 8th grade. Do you remember like at that time what was like the biggest culture shock, and what changes did you have to make to like transition into the lifestyle there in Houston? And after that, once you got to California in Berkeley, what was the shock going from Texas to California, and what changes did you have to make to transition over here?
I guess I'll like start off with answering the
Yeah.
India to Houston transition. So I actually surprisingly did not feel too much of a culture shock.
Okay.
So I guess the school I went to had a good composition of Indian people and
Gotcha.
people like the local demographics as well.
Hmm.
So I would say it was a fairly diverse school that I went
Hmm.
to. But even with all that diversity, I never felt different. Like
Gotcha.
I never felt that I was the Indian guy with the accent who just landed into the
Gotcha.
country and like is attending school, right? And I
Yeah.
never felt different compared to my peers. And I think I think the I think many students there have just like grown up with a lot of expatriate students flowing into the
Hmm.
elementary schools, middle schools, and high schools
Sure.
in the particular district that I went to. And I think they did a very good job of ensuring that these students feel very welcomed.
Hmm.
So initially, I clearly remember this. They made me take like couple of tests in the start to assess my language levels
Yeah.
and my math levels, etc. And I was placed in like a set of classes. They put me in a lower English class, and
Yeah.
or they had two levels. They had a academic level, and then they had a pre-AP level. I guess the
Yeah.
pre-AP was designed to prepare you for AP exams.
Yeah.
So I was put in academic level social studies classes and English classes. I clearly remember 2 weeks into the semester, my social studies teacher kind of refused to let me into the. She just refused to like have me in the class.
Hmm.
She's like, "You're moving to the pre-AP level. Like, I just can't have you in this class. It's not right," kind of a thing. Because I think I was just able to like catch up to. I really love history, so I
Yeah.
think I was able to like demonstrate interest and catch up to the content that they were teaching.
Yeah.
And they like forced me out of the class into a more advanced section. And
Gotcha.
I think like things like that really mattered a lot when I moved, because I think that was a uh, I guess that was very like encouraging and
Yeah. Build your
welcoming to,
confidence and
yeah, it boosted my confidence, and
yeah.
I think I was able to like settle into my like environment faster.
Gotcha.
And yeah, and I think like in the end of eighth grade, I remember that my science teacher really loved me, and he gave me an
Hmm.
award in the end of the year, like in inter like a in inter school ceremony,
Gotcha.
or within in school ceremony. Sorry, but I think like things like that really encourages people who just recently moved
Gotcha.
and are trying, I guess, their best to assimilate within the new
Yeah.
environment that they're in. And yeah, so like I guess that's like those are like small things in retrospect. I guess I'm pretty sure my science teacher forgot who I was, or his name was Blake Lanham. I'm pretty sure he forgot who I
Wow.
am. Or my first social studies teacher, Jennifer Stinson. I'm pretty sure she forgot who I am. But I think like those are like really small things that stand out to you for a very long time in your life. And I guess Texas hospitality kicked in, and
Oh
like
yeah.
I was like
Yeah.
settled in properly.
A real boy
But
genius.
yep.
See.
But I guess then was the move from Texas to California. I think that was a very interesting move as well. I think it was like a combination of people, like in my GBO group, and my floor was a combination of people who came from a variety of sociopolitical
Yeah.
backgrounds.
Yeah.
So Houston, I was very like sociopolitics was not as extreme as what
Mm.
I like witnessed in Berkeley,
Yeah.
and like people had their own political opinions, either right or left in Houston, in my school,
Yeah.
and I think people were not as vocal as they were in Berkeley. So this is kind of my so like jumping into Berkeley, I think like a lot of the sensitivity like training that GBO does to you was kind of very
Off-putting.
in yeah, it was like
No, it's
I wouldn't say weird. Weird is I guess the
okay.
wrong word, but I guess it was interesting to
Yeah.
notice that
Yeah.
many of these things that I never thought of before are being like accounted and
Gotcha.
like considered even like since day one.
Yeah.
And I think that was a very interesting introduction. And I guess like continuing like my freshman year in Berkeley, I think adjusting to various differences that exist in society was like a huge learning curve for me. I think I was uh, I think it like helped me really grow as a person
Yeah.
as I was like assimilating within my Berkeley environment and like
Yeah.
settling in my first semester.
Yeah. I think that's a great part about Berkeley is that you really get to meet so many people from like so many different backgrounds where you
Mhm.
just sort of start to appreciate and understand how to how we're all just Berkeley students. Like our differences don't matter that much once we all come together and just fight for the same goals, try to get A's in
Exactly.
classes. And then it's also interesting to hear about all these stories about how this person grew up, where this person grew up. It's just interesting to have that perspective, and I think it's something that you might not have had if you went to like UT Austin. So we're plugging Berkeley
I
here,
think
but
that is very true. And I think that's
yeah,
one of the reasons why I'm really appreciative of coming to Berkeley.
yeah,
I feel like if I went to UT, I would be with my same group of high school friends
yeah,
or friends from neighboring high schools. All
yeah.
of them came from the same economic background. And sociopolitically speaking, like it's not going to be
Like
starkly different.
usually, yeah, exactly. Yeah,
And like since you like grew up with them, you know, like yeah, you make friends within the bubble that
exactly,
you're comfortable with, and you won't
exactly.
expose yourself to like other cultures.
Yep,
And I feel like Berkeley, being in Berkeley, kind of like having no friends here, it really like pushed me to,
makes sense.
uh, uh, I guess, do a exhaustive search of what I fit into, and then like
Yep,
finding my niche.
yep.
And that exhaustive search really helped me learn many things and grow as a person.
Gotcha. Yeah, makes sense. That's also my experience. Going to Berkeley, having to adjust, and learning how to make friends, having no one around, no one to cry for help, no bubble that you feel comfortable in. It forces you to step out of your comfort zone, right? And that to me was a good thing. So retrospectively, of course, I'm very grateful for the experience I have, and meeting people like smart, driven people with very interesting stories. So yeah,
Yep, and I guess Berkeley is like filled with people like me and you. Like I mean, yeah, like obviously you're the. I've always like looked up to you, right? I'm like
thank you.
go getter, go getting those banking internships, consulting internships, and like rocking it everywhere, kind of a thing, right? I think like meeting inspirational people in Berkeley, like people like you,
Yeah,
is like really something that like I'm like, really appreciative of and like grateful for the environment that Berkeley gave.
yeah. All right, let's stop praising each other. I'm sure it's already enough. But yeah, yeah. So like I said, I just wanted to use this opportunity to like learn more about your internship, learn more about the recruiting process for software engineers, and to just catch up. It's been a while since we met each other,
Yeah.
and I'm gonna be back in the Bay Area in October, so we're gonna meet up then, and we're gonna
Hmm.
properly catch up with then, right?
Yep,
Well, I'm
that
sure
would be
we'll get that
fantastic.
opportunity. Yeah, but once again, thank you so much for coming on. And do you have any last parting words you want to plug your club, or I don't know?
I mean, yeah, go next gen,
Go next
but
gen. Yeah, exactly.
and I guess Octo, but I think yeah, this was like really fun. This was like the first time I've like had the opportunity to like chat in such an environment, and I
Yeah,
think it was like yeah, really fun,
yeah,
really and
really fun.
interesting,
Interesting. Yep.
and I'm really thankful or
Yeah,
thank
no
you
problem.
for
No problem.
hosting this.
Yeah, I'll let you know once I get everything up, and feel free to share to whoever might want to listen. And all right, thank you for coming on.
All right, thanks, Derek.
Congratulations! You've made it through the video. Now, go subscribe to all the links down below, comment, and hit that like button, and I will see you all in the next one.